All right, so it's shortly after 6 o'clock, and we have our community improvement plan open house that we have scheduled for today. Before I hand it over to Jesse, our consultant from Republic, I just want to say thank you to Middlesex County for their matching dollar for dollar for this project. So they are picking up half the costs in regards to the CIP program. A lot of hard work was put into this from staff and from the consultants to get us this far. And I'm looking forward to seeing this presentation, and then hopefully getting some good feedback from the public either today, or I believe we can still get some comments between now and the actual public meeting. So I'll hand it over to you, Jesse, to go through your presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, members of council, mayor and staff, and anybody who's tuning in either tonight live, or if they're watching this in the future. It's my understanding this will be posted. So my name is Jesse McPhail. Just to get an introduction out of the way, I am with a consulting firm called Republic Urbanism. So we're an urban planning and design firm. So we were retained by the township earlier this year to assist them in developing a community improvement plan. So as Mr. Mayor was just saying, we're sort of nearing the end of that process tonight. So we have an open house tonight. So this is more of an informal type engagement session that's towards the end of the project once we have a draft ready. And then as mentioned, we'll be looking for feedback either tonight or over the next couple of weeks. And we'll be crossing some T's and dotting I's as we kind of finalize that document. And then once we do that, council will be looking at going to a more formal public meeting and then making a decision likely in October. So without further ado, I will jump straight into it. And I just want to maybe, Mike, if I could just check the presentation's up on the screen, just a thumbs up or okay, perfect. All right, so I'll just jump into it. So I have a brief agenda for tonight. So a couple items just to walk us through here. So I'm first just going to talk a little bit about the project itself, what a CIP is, and what the project was all about this year. The next is going to be talking just a little bit about the background work that went into developing this draft. And then we're going to kind of dive in, and the meat and potatoes of the presentation tonight is going to be largely focused on the content of the plan itself. So we're going to be looking at an overview of the plan, including the financial incentive programs, as well as municipal leadership incentive or initiatives that'll be contemplated under this plan. Following that, we're going to jump into a Q&A period. So it'll be more or less like a roundtable discussion. So if there's any questions or comments that either members of council or staff or anybody joining us tonight want to share, then by all means. We do have a dedicated Q&A period, but if there is something where someone has a question that's kind of hot on the press right now, and they do feel like asking, don't be afraid to jump in. That's always fine. But if you can, try. There is a little bit of content to get through, so if we can wait, we'll try and save questions till the Q&A period. And then we'll just go over a little bit of the next steps in terms of what sort of happens after tonight in terms of statutory approvals process and the like. So the purpose of the session tonight, obviously it's an open house. So it's kind of three-pronged tonight. So we're looking at introducing the project. We're looking at reviewing the details of the draft plans, the draft community improvement plan. And then the third is for me to listen and to answer any questions or receive feedback on the draft plan that council or members of the public or staff may have. So a little bit about the project. For those who don't know, I'm going to talk a little bit just about what is a community improvement plan. So a community improvement plan is municipalities can adopt these under Section 28 of the Planning Act. So these are most often used to encourage improvement projects to lands and buildings, largely through the use of financial incentives. So typically a community improvement plan will take a look at any issues or gaps in the community, or even any opportunities, and it'll develop a framework for either incentivizing or initiating improvement projects to help address those gaps or issues that are prioritized by the community. One of the main kind of key things to take away from this is that without a community improvement plan, municipalities are generally prohibited from offering any financial incentives to the private sector. So that's kind of one of the important tools that this plan offers the municipalities, that you can legally support projects in the private sector financially. CIPs also contain sort of the flip side. So we have private side sort of incentives that would incentivize private improvements to buildings and properties. It can also contain municipal leadership initiatives. So these are things that the township could potentially consider throughout the plan's life cycle, dedicating budget monies to pursuing things on public property. So streetscape improvements, park improvements, those sorts of things to really complement the private side investment. In terms of implementation, these are usually implemented over a 10-year period. That being said, if a plan's working, I've seen CIPs be in place for 15 plus years with minor revisions here and there based on changes in priorities. So these things, as long as they're working, they can go in perpetuity. So this project specifically, so the township actually retained us in early 2022 to help them develop, to help you guys develop your first community improvement plan. So this involved help from staff, members of council, county staff, community stakeholders, as well as the public. And so this process involved kind of three main phases that I'll get into, but really working with stakeholders to help us as a consulting firm understand the priorities in the community, the key issues, because we don't live and work in the community. So it's important for us to get grounded. We can do a policy analysis, we can look at maps, we can look at photos, but really we really lean on the local knowledge and that lived experience. So from the get-go, the ultimate goal with this plan was to create an economic development tool to financially assist businesses and the community with projects that help improve the township. So collectively, the goal with this plan is to really create an improved township, improved streetscapes, improved destinations, places, to really build on the strengths that the township has. So another thing to kind of note that we identified at the start of the project is with CIPs, traditionally, they were originally used to target specific areas. So the classic sort of CIP that you would see, in the mid 2000s and late 2000s would have been like a Main Street CIP or a facade improvement program that would typically be focused on a core area or a core commercial area, and it would be very, very scoped to a couple blocks and a little bit of a streetscape. Nowadays, and especially in rural communities, there's a lot of opportunity out in the rural area with home-based businesses and agritourism, on-farm diversified uses. So a lot of communities are recognizing the value out in the rural area as well. So what we've done with this CIP is we've designated we're looking at designating the entire township as a community improvement project area so that the plan can apply township-wide, so that we're balancing both the urban and rural opportunities that are available. So in terms of the project timeline, I'll just give a quick overview here. So as I mentioned, there was kind of three main phases. The first phase was largely around April, May, and the start of June. And this was kind of the biggest part of the project was background information and research and visioning associated with the project. So this is where a lot of the public consultation took place as well. So we had a public survey and a visioning workshop with members of a couple members of council, as well as some local stakeholders and staff to help us kind of ground truth some of our findings. And this kind of culminated in the submission of a background report, which contained kind of all of our findings and kind of the key issues and the priorities that we identified. Once we figured out and got a good handle on the existing conditions in the community, and we kind of developed a vision for where this plan needs to go, the phase two was involved with drafting the CIP. So this was, putting together the policy framework, putting together the incentive programs, the initiatives, and the like. So now we've come to we're in mid-September now. We've got a draft together. We've reviewed the initial draft with staff, and now we're happy to present this to council and the public for review and feedback. So right now, as you can see, we're at the open house stage, and the last sort of step is after this tonight, we kind of go back, and if there's any feedback or changes that we need to make, we'll make those. And we'll bring it back to a public meeting and hopefully a council decision in October. So we're nearing the end of the process as we kind of wrap up tonight. So in terms of the background work that was carried out as part of the project, this is one of the most important phases, as mentioned, because it provides a lay of the land for us and for the community. So as part of this, we reviewed applicable policies, the existing conditions in the area, and we analyzed stakeholder feedback. So, we can look at zoning maps and where commercial businesses are located and some of the physical issues, but that was really complemented with the online survey and the workshop where people could give us more anecdotal evidence and lived evidence to help us really ground truth our findings. With the background report, this really culminated in recommendations for financial incentives and municipal leadership initiatives that we thought would work well with the community based on our findings. As part of this as well, we identified a recommended vision for the CIP, as well as some guiding principles to help out with implementation over the 10-year period. And this is just an example here, map of some of the assessment that we looked at in terms of businesses and land use. In terms of the stakeholder consultation carried out, so a stakeholder consultation strategy was prepared at the start of the project, because that's a really important, as I'm sounding like a broken record here, but it is a very, very important part of the process. So this identified both the public survey as well as the workshop formats that would be carried out for the project phases. So both of these events, again, were designed to coincide with the background report. And then, so in terms of stakeholder consultation, we're sort of wrapping it up now with the open house and the public meetings, in that these last two sessions are more of the mandatory or the statutory requirements for consulting with the public. So this is now being presented to council and the public for review and feedback sort of at the end of that process. As well included with that notice and with that feedback is different ministries and agencies. So the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, as well as the County of Middlesex. Typically agencies that you would see for like an official plan amendment or a zoning bylaw amendment, they're included in the notification now for feedback. So out of the background report and all those findings and the stakeholder consultation sessions that we did carry out, these are some of the community priorities and that we identified, and I just wanted to highlight a few of those on the screen for you. This is non-exhaustive. I just kind of cherry picked a few out here. So just to name a few, so we have as a priority a beautification of Main Street corridors, buildings, and properties. We have building on the strong foundation and growing prevalence of the agritourism and farm diversity industries, improving and building on public amenities, as well as better wayfinding or navigation options for the community and building identity for different areas of the township. So those are just some examples of some of the priorities that were identified in the background process. And these really informed the overall development of the vision and the guiding principles for the plan. So speaking of vision, this is the vision that was settled on for the draft community improvement plan. So as you can see, it's a vibrant destination and place to call home, balancing agricultural roots with urban amenities, embodying principles of accessibility and inclusivity, and promoting healthy lifestyles for all ages. So this is kind of the overall framework that plan is looking to follow. And that vision statement is informed by 5 kind of key guiding principles. So these are to, not through Adelaide Metcalfe, an active and healthy Adelaide Metcalfe. Adelaide Metcalfe is attainable and inclusive, moving together in Adelaide Metcalfe, and reinforcing Adelaide Metcalfe's roots. So just to explain on these a little bit more. So when we say to, not through Adelaide Metcalfe, this guiding principle is more focused on establishing a stronger sense of place and destination, a pull factor for travelers or those coming to the community, and really looking to slow down people to stop in the community in different areas and really spend some time. An active and healthy Adelaide Metcalfe is looking at more strengthening the presence and role of existing community assets like parks and heritage sites and aging in place facilities and activities. Adelaide Metcalfe is attainable and inclusive. So this is looking at creating programming and supportive policies to help foster more attainable housing provision or affordable housing provision. So housing affordability is a huge issue across Canada and especially in Ontario as well right now. And everything that we can do to assist people in finding affordable housing, it's a great idea to inject that, and we're able to under the Planning Act. So this is focused on that sort of thing. Moving together in Adelaide Metcalfe, and this is more focused on creating a more pedestrian and bike-friendly travel options throughout the township. So recognizing that private vehicles are very important in a rural community, but the roads should be shared in specific areas, and safety should be improved, and mobility, accessibility, for people requiring barrier-free accommodations and the like. And certainly last but not least is reinforcing Adelaide Metcalfe's roots. So the township has a strong agricultural base and economy. So we want to recognize and celebrate that through the CIP. So this guiding principle is more focused on providing support for ventures associated with agritourism, on-farm diversified uses, and general economic development in the rural area. So with this vision and the guiding principles that I've just presented, these will really help guide plan implementation over the next 10 years. And these guiding principles will be particularly important when the township is reviewing applications for funding. So one of the things that the plan lays out is tying an application for funding back to how does it meet, all or some of these guiding principles of the plan, and to help council make a decision on funding amounts and projects. So now sort of the more exciting part is the actual community improvement plan overview. So to give a summary of the plan, so we've got just a showcase here of the township boundary. So as mentioned, in order to adopt a community improvement plan, the township needs to identify a community improvement project area, it's called, or a CIPA. So as I mentioned, traditional CIPs would be more focused on specific areas and main streets. What we've done here is we're proposing to designate the entirety of the township as a CIPA, so that the plan can be implemented across the urban and rural areas. So this will the plan essentially will support community improvement projects throughout the township over the next 10 years. And as mentioned, the entire township will be designated a CIPA. And within the plan itself, it will specify within any of the grant programs a little more specifically where these programs are appropriately applied. So a rural or a countryside focused grant, probably not appropriate in an urban area. So the plan lays out those details to ensure that it's balanced. In terms of the actual incentives and initiatives contained in the plan, so we have 7 total financial incentive programs and 4 municipal leadership initiatives. So with the financial incentive programs, these are kind of self-explanatory. These are really targeted funding programs to address specific projects in the township. So whether it be facade improvement or improvements to accessibility on a site or a building, those would help out financially with those projects. The municipal leadership initiatives, again, those are projects that the township and that council can decide to take on if and when budget monies become available, and you can pursue those municipal leadership initiatives to complement the private side investment in the community. So one thing to note that's quite important is that this plan isn't a checklist for things that the township is going to do 100%. It's not a to-do list. It's more of a guiding document. So both with the incentive programs and the initiatives, Township Council has full discretion on what they want to activate or pursue throughout the lifespan of the plan. So typically, This will, determining these factors will be done around budget time, as budget monies are going to be the determining factor as to how far we can stretch the plan, or if we need to be a little tighter one year. But at the end of the day, township has full discretion as to whether or not they're offering all programs, one program, a couple, and the like. So in terms of the financial incentive programs, so we have 7. These are the first 4 here. So we have a countryside program, a site beautification program, a facade and signage program, and an accessibility program. So the countryside program, as the name suggests, this is looking at supporting sort of the establishment of value-added agricultural businesses, agritourism, sort of recreational tourism or related home-based businesses outside of more, downtown areas. So this is kind of your rural economic development grant here. But one thing to note is that it's not necessarily intended for general agricultural uses. So it needs to be something that kind of is more diversified in terms of the project. In terms of site beautification, this is intended to encourage improvements to sites on which a non-residential use or business is located. And this is largely looking at the site itself and not necessarily a building. So this could help assist financially with, landscaping, hardscaping, improving a pedestrian seating area or a walkway, site lighting, any sort of decorative features that would really contribute to the aesthetic of a property. Facade and signage is sort of the traditional CIP program, and this is looking at, it's pretty self-explanatory, building facades. So helping out with refinishing of building facades and improving, it could be lighting and awnings, it could be the look and feel of the building. This could also be associated with public art or art on the side of buildings. So and it also includes signage here. So this would be looking to support new or improved signage for businesses. And the last one on this page here is the accessibility program. So this one here is intended to help support improvements to a building or a site that's looking to improve their accessibility for those requiring barrier-free accommodation. So wheelchair ramps, fully accessible washrooms, automatic doors, those sorts of things would be the projects that would fall under an eligible project for that program. Now, you'll note that there's a couple, there's dollar amounts listed underneath each of the programs. These are the upper limits of funding that would be potentially available to an individual who is applying for these grants. That being said, and I wanted to keep the text on the slides to a minimum, so I'll just kind of explain what goes into that overall maximum there. So there's kind of generally 3 types of grant formats within each of these programs. So you have a construction cost matching amount, you have a professional fee matching amount, and then you have a permit matching amount. So with the construction costs, these would be things like your materials, your labor, your contractors, those sorts of things that you'd be paying for to have the work done itself. So this would be based on a cost matching of 50% up to a maximum of $5,000. So this would be for each of them potentially. And so that means if you're looking to get that full $5,000 amount, you're paying yourself $10,000, and then that grant would pay back to you that $50,000. For the professional fees, this would be a maximum of $1,500. So again, it'd be a 50% cost matching. So you're spending $3,000 up to for an architect or an engineer or some other consultant to assist you with your improvement project. The township could potentially subsidize up to $1,500 of that. And then the last one is building and planning fees. So this would be assisting with, your zoning applications, your planning applications, and your building permits. Those can sometimes get quite costly. So this fee would help out with that too on a matching basis as well. You'll note that the accessibility, this is the only one that is not at $8,000. And the reason for this is that there is a upset limit for the permit fee amounts for these 3. There is no upset limit for a permit fee amount for an accessibility improvement. So with that program, the township would be potentially looking at covering 100% of the costs of a permit associated with, installing a wheelchair ramp or retrofitting a bathroom and the like. And the final three incentive programs that are contemplated under the plan would be the additional residential unit program, the attainable housing program, and the conversion, expansion, and redevelopment program. So with the additional residential unit program, or ARU, so these are also known as secondary suites. This program would be looking at supporting the establishment of new ARUs, or legalizing existing ARUs that may not be up to code or may not have gotten their permits, and they may have flown under the radar. So that would be looking at helping improve safety for those living in those units, as well as creating new units. These units are a great way to improve housing attainability in a community for relatively low financial and physical impact. So with these grants, again, you'd be looking at with the ARU as well as the conversion expansion. It's the similar format as the previous ones, where you're looking at an upset limit of $8,000 split between construction costs, professional fees, and permits. With the attainable housing grant, this would be intended to help with the costs associated with developing attainable rental housing options or affordable residential housing options. So within the CIP, we have a definition for attainable. So if you meet that criteria, that's one of the primary eligibility requirements, is meeting that criteria for attainable housing. And the other factor with this is you need to be creating a new attainable rental unit for this. So with this one, it looks like a lot of money up just on paper right now, but this is based on a construction cost matching grant of 15% of the construction costs up to $5,000 per unit for 4 units max. So you can have up to 4 units financially assisted under this program at 15% a piece. This would also allow for professional fee matching, as well as building and planning fee grants as well to support that there. I have an OR here. So this is the only other program, the only program that has a different style of grant, and this is called a tax increment grant. And these are usually offered in cases where the development of a property would see a significant increase in assessed value. So what a municipality can do with a community improvement plan is where you do have that significant increase in tax assessment. This grant is based on that net increase. So, say that just for argument, the taxes on the property 1 year are $10,000, and then it goes up to 20. That increase from 10 to 20 is $10,000. So you start with your grant there, and it depreciates in value for the period of the grant. So what we're proposing here is a 5-year depreciating tax increment grant that would help cover the municipal portion of taxes of that increase. So these would be usually for your larger projects, and this would just be offered for the attainable housing grant. And last but not least, we have the conversion, expansion, and redevelopment program. So this would be looking at supporting investment in the redevelopment or renovation of existing buildings or expansion of existing buildings, usually structural alterations or additions to existing sites. So to improve their viability for businesses or new services that are being offered. So again, a similar grant format to the previous ones. And now quickly, I just have a couple more slides here with respect to the municipal leadership initiatives. So there was 4 that were identified in the plan. And again, these aren't to-do lists. These aren't checklists for the township. These are meant to provide guidance to council as to some actions that they can undertake to help improve the community. So the first is the wayfinding and placemaking improvements. So this would be focused on creating a clearer and more consistent brand for the township. Things like improving signage and guidelines and improving the look and feel of, gateway features. So, welcome to Adelaide Metcalfe, really making it a little more prominent, and that you're in the township when you're in there. So again, fostering that stronger sense of place. And wayfinding, for those who aren't familiar with the term, it has to do with signage and navigation and identifying where you are in the community. The second is focused on Center Road. So this is an important gateway for the township, and it's a really primary commercial corridor and economic center in the township. So Center Road, we did note in our assessment of this area that it is quite auto-centric. It's quite highway commercial in nature, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But right now in its current state, it is a little hairy for pedestrians and cyclists and those looking to cross the road and the like. So this Center Road urbanization strategy would be looking more on improvements that can be done to help growth in this area and development in this area that is more of an urban format. So looking at improving safety and amenities for non-vehicles, potentially looking at design guidelines for new development. This is a primary corridor. And then as well as potentially looking at opportunities to coordinate area development with municipal neighbors and with landowners in the area. And the final two leadership initiatives the third is public amenity improvements. So this would be really looking at projects similar to the Kerwood Park improvements that have been undertaken over the last few years. So things like that. So investing in improvements to existing public lands and buildings. This could also consider the creation of new public spaces or parks or amenities. And, that could take the form of, land purchase or partnerships with the Conservation Authority or landowners who are interested in partnering with the township. And this could also look at examining existing public amenity spaces for access issues. So again, barrier-free accessibility. And the last but not least is the mobility, safety, and walkability leadership initiative. So this would be looking at assessing areas along main roads and commercial corridors for safety, mobility, and identifying improvements that can be done. So this could be, crosswalks or wider sidewalks, or it could even be amenities for landscaping, the like. Traffic calming and walkability could be potentially considered under a strategy for hamlets and villages. And a big part of this would involve likely some consultation with the public to identify, those key problem areas where we're having conflicts with cars and people. So again, this is just a very high level overview of what these initiatives entail or could potentially entail. The plan does provide quite a comprehensive list of considerations that council can make. And again, each of these are intended to, they could be carried out separately, they could be carried out together to achieve the improvement goals for the community. So with that said, I know it's a lot of information, but I'll probably just jump into the Q&A here, and I'm sure there's some questions or comments that maybe members of council or staff have. So I will open the floor.
Okay, thank you so much for the presentation so far. Is there any questions from members of council? Yeah, Councillor McKinnon.
Jesse, I was just wondering, you mentioned the redevelopment of certain properties, and that I'm assuming is brownfields.
So it's a very good question. So under this CIP, we didn't identify a significant number of brownfields in the township. So under a traditional CIP, that is a common program that what you would have, but that wasn't an item that was identified as a priority through the backgrounding process. So there's no programming in place to looking at brownfield redevelopment in this case.
Jesse, I was thinking primarily of the former Metcalfe Township's landfill site, which was closed, 2 years ago? And I wondered if that might be something that we might look at under this grant.
That's actually a good question and or comment. And actually, I think if I'm understanding the comment correctly, that sort of topic would likely fall under the municipal leadership initiative that's focused on public amenity improvements. So the township, with the former landfill, those are quite challenging sites to deal with. And what we've seen in communities is you're kind of restricted as to what kind of activities and uses you can have on them. It's my understanding that those can be used for recreational type uses that are sort of low impact, and there's not a lot of opportunity for conflict with the users, and so that's definitely something that I think could be looked at under a public amenity improvements initiative. But again, that would be something that would be more township council would be pursuing rather than looking at giving incentives for it, because it's likely that landfill would be publicly owned, I'm assuming. I hope that answers the question.
It does.
Okay.
All right. Is there any other questions from members of council so far? No? All right. What about any comments at all from members in the gallery? Well, don't be too shy. Okay, we got a question over here. Councillor Clark.
Okay, Jesse, thanks for your report. I was writing down questions as you were talking and then you were answering them. So that was good. We were on the same wavelength. It's nice to see that the dollars are a little more realistic. So back when the Main Street program started in certain municipalities, and I think even the county did, I think it started at $3,500 and you had to have a matching component there. So this is a little more realistic, the 8,000. So it's taken forever to come up with a good number. So I'd like to see that. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing how we can implement this. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you. Actually, further to that point, and this is something that I actually did forget to mention, but as part of the background process, one of the things that we do is kind of get a feel for the temperature of other CIPs in the neighborhood, in the region. So if some of you may know or recognize that, I know I've worked with Mike actually in the past. This will be our 4th CIP in the county. So what we've done, over the last few years is we've got a good handle on what other municipalities in the area are doing, what grant amounts they're offering. And that's one of the important things is like, you don't want a plan that's token and nobody can really do anything with a low amount of money. So it's important to balance, understanding that it could be a significant investment from council's perspective and budget perspective, but understanding that you need to have a proper size carrot in order for that private investment to take place. So all that to say is that we did kind of test the waters around the township to make sure that you guys have a competitive plan, but that's not overly competitive or underly competitive. You're kind of you're able to meet up with your neighbors in terms of what you're offering. So appreciate it.
All right, just a question in regards to the, budgeting the CIP. So we've seen the numbers on the slide there, upwards of, $8,000 in some different projects, or $24,000 or whatever that was. What comes first? Is council, do we look at budgeting those dollar amounts first? Or do we look at having people apply for these programs, and then council at that time decides what programs go forward and then implement that into the budget?
So best practice would likely be council would identify a budget amount for the CIP as part of their annual budget process. And then so let's say, for instance, the budget comes around, starts getting talked about in later this fall, it gets approved. You likely would have an intake period for your CIP early next year. So you have your funding amount, and let's say 30,000 gets earmarked for CIP. So what council can do is you guys can kind of have flexibility in terms of that 30,000. So hypothetically, I'm not signing a check that I can't cash, but if you have 30,000 set aside for a CIP, council can do any number of things, and they can restrict that to just incentive programs. They can say 15,000 of that will go towards incentive programs, and 15,000 will go towards one of the municipal leadership initiatives, getting a strategy or a study done. But the long of the short of the long of it is, it's kind of up to council how they want to tackle that. But it would be our recommendation that it would be an annual process where you set a budget amount, and then as part of that, you decide which programs you're going to fund for that year. So, you know, it could be all 7, but again, you don't necessarily want to stretch yourself too thin either. So you want to really make sure that you have a meaningful amount of money to put behind what you are implementing. So typically, you know, you'd activate a couple programs and say, this amount of money is going to support those. And then, you know, if council does want to go one step further and divide it by saying, this is for incentives, this is for initiatives, you can do that too. And then as a reporting mechanism or a monitoring mechanism, you know, sometimes we find that, you know, programs aren't getting the uptake that they should, or, you know, or one program is just hugely popular. So in the CIP, it does outline monitoring and reporting requirements. So throughout the year, staff will track applications and funding amounts and requests that come in. And council will usually, it's recommended in the CIP that staff bring forward an update report every year to show council, you know, this is how many applications we're receiving. These are the types of projects. Here's some recommendations, you know, for next year. And then you can kind of have a baseline for, oh, do we need to think about upping that amount, or should we, you know, shift this money into more leadership initiatives? So there's a couple ways you can cut it.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions that have come to mind at all from members of council or from the gallery? And I don't think anybody's joined us on Zoom at all. Doesn't look like it. Alrighty, so what is, I think the next thing on your agenda is next steps. Is that right? There we go.
Yes, sir. So I can quickly, it's just a one slide here. So in terms of the final approval process, so tonight's the open house as mentioned. It's not necessarily a statutory requirement under the Planning Act, but it's something we like to make sure we do as a sort of a last round of engagement. So following this open house, the township will be hosting a public meeting on October 3rd to allow the public or agencies to make formal submissions to council on the plan. So again, right now isn't the only time that feedback can be provided. If there's questions or comments that come up, you know, in the next couple of days or in the next week, please feel free to forward them to staff, and they'll forward them to the consulting team, and we'll look at how we can address those, or if there's any changes that are required. So as part of the public meeting process, this is a statutory requirement under the Planning Act. This will follow a similar process to something like a zoning bylaw amendment or an official plan amendment, in that council will consider all public feedback and comments received through this engagement process, and decide on whether or not to adopt the plan as is, or defer a decision to a future meeting should there be, you know, revisions needed. And this will be done by way of bylaw. So council will review, and there will be a community improvement plan bylaw that will outline the geographic area that the plan applies, and it will also be including a copy of the CIP. So all that to say, and again, I don't want to presuppose too much, but it's our understanding that a council decision on the CIP is anticipated to be made on October 3rd. However, that's subject to, you know, if we do receive any feedback that, you know, requires addressing through revisions to the plan, we can always do that and hold off. So that's sort of the next steps. And I guess I want to thank everybody for you know, for taking the time out of your night to listen and to participate. And I just want to say, on behalf of Republic Urbanism, it's been a pleasure working with Morgan and Mike and their team. And I want to give a shout out as well to Kara Finn from the county. She was also a big part of participating from that county level and giving a county economic development perspective as well. So that being said, our contact information is provided on the this last slide here. So if anybody, you know, has any thoughts or questions and they want to follow up, or if they just want to chat a little more about CIPs, our doors are always open. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. That was my last question, is what email address should people contact, or what phone number to call? So that's perfect to have that information up there. All right, if there's nothing further, I didn't really open this meeting. Do we just do a little wrap up, Mike?
It's just an open house. So
Okay. All right, so sounds good. Thank you so much. And anybody that's watching live on YouTube, we will be back at 7 o'clock for our regular council meeting. Okay, thank you, Jeff.